Vajnanatirandasya Jnanandana Savakaya Chashurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajanulam Vitabhujo Kanakavadakaro Sankirtanaya Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishvambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Pado Vande Jagadvigaro Varunavamtakaro Vande Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Gauraya Pushpavanto Chitrasanlotamundo Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charanasako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subharapriyo He Krishna Kara Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Danta Radha Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhaye Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Ramani Harive Shri Guru Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Radha Madhava Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanand. Morning. Any questions this morning? Yes.
You mentioned yesterday to me that good sangha means like-minded and affectionate associates. And I'm noticing that, especially in the social media, but even maybe further than that, the it's a minefield for a new bhakta. It's conflicting. Not only are there different religious paths, but even within a path of religion, like Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there's so many conflicting devotees that seem to be at odds with one another. So,
Really?
what would be your instructions to a new bhakta, to avoid that minefield, and what precautions can be there? Because I see a lot of confusion, in that marketplace of the.
Or an old bhakta.
Well, I can tell you that I tried to be a voice of sanity and scriptural conclusions in that format for some time, and I got a fair amount of appreciation from persons who were reading and so forth, and I tried it in different ways, and I found that it was overall not worth it. I hate to say that in a sense, because if one person is benefited by it, it's worth it in a sense. But it's such an unconducive environment that I found it very frustrating myself these days. Anybody can sit behind a keyboard and you can't see what they do, what they're actually like, and they can write anything. They could sound intelligent, with regard to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, to an uninformed person, and so, as you say, it's very confusing. So, at any rate, what I have done myself in terms of what I do, I mean, I'm not confused by what's out there, but I'm frustrated by what's out there, and you can make, my experience very well reasoned, scripturally supported, and points with tolerance and respect, even for other people who are, in one sense, hardly worthy of it in terms of their opinions. And we met with just very crazy, illogical, unreasonable responses. I've said before, and it brings it to mind as we speak on this subject, that one of my faults, my biggest faults, is that I tend to think that people who have demonstrated themselves to be unreasonable will respond reasonably to good reason. It just doesn't happen for the most part. So it's been very frustrating, and so I've gravitated towards participating in a limited way in forums that can be controlled to some extent, and undesirable elements can be dealt with effectively so that they don't clutter the landscape, so to speak. It's just like if we hold a program here and we invite everyone, and then some people are very rowdy and whatnot, and we have a way of kind of saying, sorry, you have to leave now, something like that. So I think you have to have forums, if you will, like that, and how people will get to them is probably through the people who participate in those forums and also participate elsewhere, which I'm not doing. But we have, for example, a site called Harmonist, and it's run by my students, Gauravani and Prem Bhakti, and they publish articles there that are both core Gaudiya philosophy, and that are also includes articles dealing with topics that might be of interest to someone who is a Gaudiya Vaishnava and is spiritually, obviously, involved in spiritual pursuit, and would be interested in topics, how other people approach similar topics. I've written articles about it, for example, either science and spirituality type of issues that we deal with, other people are dealing with them, and so those types of articles or news articles that may be of interest and so forth are published there. And we've had that forum for a while, and it accepts comments and so forth. And sometimes we get comments that aren't worth publishing, and so we don't give them the microphone. And we're very we do tolerate a fair amount. But if people become unreasonable and their doubts, for example, they become unreasonable, then we don't allow it to go on. So it's controlled, and that site in particular is a good site. It's a very good site. It's unique in that way that it is not insular. It's integrated with the thought currents of the world today, and affords participants in it who are primarily Gaudiya Vaishnavas, that's the core of it, to get some experience through the articles that we publish of what other people in contemporary spirituality are thinking, or what, from the non-theistic sector who preach against theism or spirituality, their arguments and so on and so forth. I mean, the climate out there is so bad, as you say. One of the aspects of it is a fundamentalist kind of orientation, that we get people who come on there and say, what kind of article is this? What does this have to do with Krishna? You know, Krishna is broader than you might think. And that's part of the problem out there. But anyway, that's, and I didn't comment on that forum on articles and so forth, and other people do. And I think that's an example of a kind of an internet forum where you can participate in Gaudiya Vaishnava culture discussions and in a thoughtful way. But again, it's something that's monitored, and it's out there. If people do a search for a topic, they might come up with, at the site, and it gets a fair amount of visitors and so forth. But that is, again, I think, the kind of environment that can take advantage, if you will, of the internet as an opportunity to give people exposure to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. These free-for-alls and whatnot are they're not very conducive. But then, people participate, for example, in Harmonist, or we have a Facebook site called Tata Vivek, and it's only people who are affiliated with our sect are on there, and so it's a controlled environment. I mean, I'm not talking about censorship here or something. I'm just talking about creating an environment that's going to be conducive for thoughtful exchange of ideas about Krishna consciousness that is conducted within the parameters that it should be conducted within, where there's scriptural support for points that are made, and the objective is to understand the texts in an ongoing way and to associate with others and so forth. And so, as I say, members of these forums, those who participate in there, and they may be active in other ways on the internet, Facebook or something themselves. They meet people and they can invite people to come and participate. But without those kinds of controls, I mean, it's difficult. And you have the other side where there's a controlled format, and good ideas aren't allowed to be on there because it's a control from a sectarian institutional vantage point. And we're not like that. I'm not at all, sectarian, and we don't have a big institution to protect here. They're mostly thoughts, and some things manifest out of the thoughts that are physical, more tangible, less abstract, I should say. Otherwise, yeah, it's a minefield, and but it's not relative to spirituality. I mean, it's just the world. It's just so much information, and so anybody gets on there and says, I was a CIA operative, for 30 years, and you want to know the truth, here's what it is, and you don't know if the guy's a CIA operative or whatever, If you got a brain, you look at everything on there, whatever attracts your attention, follow up on it, see if the guy isn't just got out of the hospital, who's telling you what the truth of the news is, and so forth. So it's as much as there is a groundswell of in the popular sector of discontent with the mainstream media. The non-mainstream media is pretty bizarre as well in other ways. So it's not exclusive to spiritual culture, or certainly not to our tradition. It's just the state of affairs. That's the downside of just having so much information available. It's a problem, just like it was thought and is probably still in some circles that happiness is about choices, having more choices. I mean, it's just a huge problem. You want to buy anything, and you got to sort through 10,000 different people that are selling it and what they say about it. And then you go to Amazon to get the reviews, and then you find out half the reviews are fake, and it's just like it's bizarre. So too much information, too many opportunities. These things are not necessarily, in many ways, a recipe for happiness or arriving at conclusive understanding that will will help you to improve the quality of your life. So it's a problem. I mean, it has its advantages, but my point here is everybody's dealing with the problem. The government probably deals with the problem. Government's part of the problem as well. So therefore, Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, these older texts, they make a good point when they say that Brahmanda, for example, Brahmanda Brahmite Kon Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhai Bhakti Rata Beach. One's lucky one finds a real guru. He's lucky or lucky. There's an explanation of that, of course, a philosophical explanation of what lucky means, but it's by good fortune. And in times gone by, this was thought to be the case, that there were many distractions and so forth. And it certainly hasn't changed. It's only increased in many respects. So what can you say? I mean, there's the good side and the bad comes with it. So you have exposure that you wouldn't have. People have opportunity, for example, in our tradition, hear about it, its beauty, its charm, and so forth. But they might not have otherwise, and they have opportunity to hear about distorted representations of it, misrepresentations of it. And so you try to minimize the downside in some way and maximize the advantage that particular vehicle provides. And that said, I think that with regard to our tradition of Gaudiya Vedanta, if someone becomes interested in that and they find a source that is really compelling and inspiring, and they look into it and they find that the example corresponds with the precept, and then they would do good to then hone their association to include those who are of a similar persuasion, whose faith has grown in the same way, around the same conception, and to avoid or to not consider that association outside of that is necessarily what is termed sadhusanga, or association with saintly persons. And therefore the terms that you speak of, svajatiya, snigdasya, these are given by the Goswamis, that sadhusanga means to associate with devotees. And there are different kinds of devotees. So there are devotees who are less advanced than ourselves. There are those who are our peers, and there are those who are more advanced than ourselves. And Rupa Goswami has given a formula, basically, of how to associate with neophyte devotees, with intermediate devotees, on the part of other intermediate devotees and superlative devotees. So, for example, the intermediate devotee is characterized by having this type of discrimination. He or she knows how to associate with those who are less progressive by showing them kindness, setting an example for them, offering the teaching to them as much as they're receptive and interested and curious to know, and so forth. Amongst the peers, to exchange thoughts that are about the topics, the discussions, share them, and after the talks, to relish them and this point and that point, and look them up and this type of thing amongst one another. And then for those who are superior, to hear from them, to render service to them, and so forth. This is the basic formula. And all of this, at the same time, is for it to be sadhusanga, in much as the neophyte, the intermediate, and the advanced devotees are all sadhus. In a sense, they're all sadhakas. They're all practitioners. They're all on the path. All of that, it should be within the context of that which is on top of that, favorable, like-minded, and affectionate, so to speak. So in like-minded, we have to have obviously a couple of definitions of that. A broader definition. Broader definition is that my faith has come and grown and is being nourished in a particular way, and another person's faith is being encouraged in that same way by the same person, by the same sangha, and so forth. So we're like-minded. So we should stick together. As our faith has grown, just like faith, we get faith by having the association of devotees. And once the faith comes, then we want to increase the faith now by more association, and that will be in a more focused way. Because without any focus, I had this association and I got faith in these topics. Now I've got that, so I want to carry that into association, and I want to further it. So in the context of that type of association with faith, I'm going to find someone who really stands out in terms of precept, in terms of example, that really is compelling, and so forth. And then I want to attach myself to that, to him or her. This is the idea of finding the guru. And then found it has Krishna has come to them, let us say, in the same way. So their association is like-minded. It's like-minded, and you have much in common there, significantly in common, enough to form some type of a bond. This is it's a broad idea. And then affectionate. Well, if in the context of the association, there should be there should be affectionate dealings. It's part of Krishna consciousness. So now, what are affectionate dealings? That you have to think about a little bit too, because it's not just kind of new agey, body, what do they call it? Touchy-feely, kind of association, for example, with the guru is association with the guru. So it's affection that we should expect in the context of the nature of the relationship. So it's not that, well, I have a guru, so I should have an affectionate romantic relationship, because that's what I think is affectionate, or that he's going to be, my father, or no, he's the guru. So he or she teaches, and if you bring an apple, to class, it used to be, it means you must be appreciating, and the teacher's going to pay some attention, and so the teacher is guru in this case is giving the teachings, and if he or she sees the student is interested in learning and asking questions about it, naturally his or her attention is going to be go there. I think my time is being well spent, and there's going to be an affectionate bond that develops. That's the basis of the bond in the first place. So the basis of the bond in the first place is that has to be cultured for it to be developed that much more. So it's a teacher-student relationship, really, that can border on, obviously, on friendship within certain parameters. So it's the nature. So we have to look for affection in the context of the nature of the relationship. And wise love can also sometimes be a little tough love, as they say. So, you could ask Guru Maharaj, I was thinking about maybe I should do this. What do you think? Those, to have a meaningful relationship, you have to ask the question with the interest of hearing, no, that's not a good idea, or yes, that's a good idea. Not just, I want this to be a good idea, and if it's not, it wasn't very affectionate, You're missing the point there, So otherwise, in general, Gaudiya Vaishnavas should be affectionate. Devotees are affectionate with one another, and so forth. Somebody was telling me that a fellow had joined an anti-cult group, and he was saying that, it was so affectionate, and so forth. I mean, it's the same when anybody comes here. I mean, people are affectionate, they're kind. It's not absent in the other groups. He was a member of a similar group. So, but there are certain parameters. What the group is teaching is going to dictate to some extent how the affection will be shown. If the group is just all about, you're great, and a very humanistic, perspective, then affection is going to be shown in another way. I mean, in our group, we might have affection by way of saying, that's not a good idea, don't do that. We don't think that's good for you. Instead of being more accepting. So there could be groups that just accept whatever you like. Hey, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, there are other criterion to consider, whether that's going to help you spiritually. So you have to have, a spiritual idea in mind when we say affectionate and like-minded. So I've given a broader understanding of like-minded. Now within that we can say, okay, I have my inspiration coming from this guru, and you do too, so we're like-minded, but man, we're not like-minded. On another level, that may also be there. And so then you understand that you have a relationship in an overarching sense, but within that, it may break down to some extent, and this is just human nature. So we have differences, and there are certain devotees in our group that we're going to get along with better than others. We respect everyone, but then the principle remains. You can be with those who you really have like mind with. You're going to thrive, and actually, and almost naturally, there's going to be affection there amongst the more like-minded the association is. So, as I say, if you're looking, let's say, for spiritual life, and you come in touch with the Bhagavad Gita, and you get it from a Gaudiya sect, and that perspective you find compelling and so forth, then you want to associate with Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and then in the context of doing that, you're going to find some prominent Gaudiya Vaishnava who really has a definitive kind of gives the definitive answers and sets an example that you find compelling, and then you're going to want to start to hone your association from the broader context to, like, here I get the definitive answers. So it's not that I get a definitive answer, and then I go over there and say, well, what do you think? What do you think? This is not going to help you. You get the answer, you get an epiphany, that was a good answer. You have to then follow that. Try to now keep association so that answer can become part of your life and how you live your life. So that brings up another point, that association is not just collecting information. And in the context of association with more advanced devotees, our guru, as I said earlier, how we do that association? Just by collecting information? No, by serving. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj used to sit in the latter days of his life on his veranda for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, just to discuss with us, just to allow us questions and so forth. But at one point in one discussion, some people were asking questions, and he said, "You should know I'm not an information board. I'm not here just to give information, just to titillate your intellect and so forth." So to associate there meaningfully with such a person, who we understand to be superlative devotee by the way of his example and answers and so forth, then it's mandated for us to serve in some capacity, and that's what it means. And then that's meaningful association according to Rupa Goswami's prescription. And then you're going to feel a result, when you do that. Right? It's practical. So you have to understand these things. It's a bit of a system or a science, if you will. There's a method to the madness of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. There's a method to sadhu sangha. It's not just a big kitchery. Just throw some rice and all in the pot and turn it on the water and let it go. It's quite a refined offering, if you will, and you need to sort these things out. So if you find Gaudiya Vaishnavism, you're going to find someplace that you get the most inspiration. You should stay within that. And of course, people are going to do that in the wrong way, whatever, or in a way that I wouldn't think was a right choice. They're going to do that. That's true. But we have to understand Gaudiya Vaishnavism. I'm not advocating a sectarian policy here. We don't have a sectarian policy. Here, there are students from different groups here, initiated, uninitiated, disciples of my guru and other gurus, and so on and so forth. I'm not. There's a positive sectarianism and a pejorative, way of using the term. I'm trying to speak about both. There are groups that are very sectarian, and you know, we don't need to criticize other, we need to discuss the philosophy. And if other ideas are not in line with the tradition and so forth, the teaching that constitutes Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we were bound to point that out. But anyway, these are just some thoughts that come to mind in relation to your question. But at any rate, as we begin to understand, I'm getting the most help here, wherever that is, then you should take advantage of that. If at a certain point it's not helping you anymore, you know, either that's the problem is you, or there may be a problem on the other side. That's also possible. You may be helped by a certain group because it offers certain things that are auxiliary to even Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and you don't realize that they're auxiliary. And the Gaudiya Vaishnavism may be the theory of it may be weak even, so you may gravitate there, and then you may find that you need more understanding of the teaching and so forth. And what was once a fountain is now dried up. That's also happens. So you have to be a little courageous to be a sadhaka, to go forward. Now there may be reasons that are pertain to you and your inability to apply yourself that causes you not to be able to partake, to drink from the cup. And so you have to sort that out primarily by way of making the case. If you have a certain association and you're thriving in it, and then after a while you're not, then you have to bring it up and say, you know, I'm not getting whatever from this. And then we have to sincerely bring it up, and we can point out and see if it's you or it's me. And it could be you, it could be me, theoretically. It could be neither one of the two. There's also in-betweens. So but you need to bring it up and be sorted out. And if someone is a qualified leader, they'll help you to go. They'll be able to recognize, oh, the problem is me. I'm not able to nourish this person sufficiently. And I should suggest they should get nourishment over here. And if the problem is you, then you may also have to say, go over there. That may also be a problem. Or there may be stay here, and this is why, and so on and so forth. Or it may be, we say, in between. So, but the objective of the teacher is to help you to make progress. It's not to have some follower or something in your pocket. So if you have a pension plan, you know, for your old age or something like that. It's to help people, and that has to be the standard of leadership in Krishna consciousness. It's not always the case, unfortunately, and that's part of the problem that you're talking about. But it is a minefield, and people are going to get blown up. That's just a fact. Practically, it's like a nuclear holocaust as compared to the environment in which I joined, which was just, there was Prabhupada, there was nobody else. It was a very faithful environment, and now it's like a nuclear the day after, you know, is the landscape. But you know, I'm active there. Pujapati Maharaj asked me to do relief work for those suffering from radiation and so forth.
We're most grateful.
So make an effort. We got a lot of damaged goods that come our way that we work on, and we've been able to help some. So I'm happy for that. That's what I was asked to do by him. Prabhupada asked me to do outreach. Maharaj asked me to do relief work. So we do both. So what else? Yes.
I was listening to one of your lectures a little while back, and you were making the point that an Uttam Bhakta can descend to the Madhyama platform, but then you also said that a Kanishta could temporarily ascend to the Madhyama platform for preaching purposes, and that really confused me. So
I think you might have heard that wrong. Okay. I'd be surprised if I.
I was surprised.
Said that. the idea there is that that the intermediate stage, which is characterized by discrimination, which is, I mean, to use your intelligence if you're going to disseminate, be involved in the dispensation of Krishna consciousness, you have to use your intelligence. And you cannot be in a swoon, in a trance. You find Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go into a trance, he would come out. But he was not doing that when he's preaching to Prakashananda or converting Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He's acting like an intermediate devotee. The background of that, of course, is his higher realization. So that intermediate type of consciousness of the external world has a background to it that makes whatever he does say very powerful. It will be less powerful from one who doesn't have the same background and capacity to go into trance like Mahaprabhu did, for example. But Mahaprabhu was not constantly in a trance. Sometimes he's in fully in internal consciousness, sometimes he's half and half, sometimes he's in fully external consciousness. And you got to be in somewhat at least half external consciousness and not fully to preach. So that's kind of the idea. So you can come from the higher side down to that, or you can have ascended there from the Kanishta platform. You can become a Madhyamadikari, obviously, and then you're in a good position to do that kind of work. Not in as good a position as someone who comes down, so to speak, to do that. So maybe that's what I was referring to.
Okay.
As a Kanishta, you can go to the Madhyam platform by way of progress in the intermediate platform, and then you're in a position to properly share the teachings, having understood them, because one of the characteristics of the intermediate devotee is understanding the teachings, having applied their intellect to the teachings well, and so forth. But the Kanishta can't just decide to become Madhyam for a while. That doesn't work. That's surely what I meant. So, yes.
I think we had some personal experience leaving aside Sukriti that would come forward from a prior life. We saw that when A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, some of his young disciples would accomplish the most amazing things under his blessing. I'm trying to reconcile that with what you just said in regards to Kanishta Adhikari's preaching effectively.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes we can be valued and carried by the association of a superlative devotee to do things that we would not be able to otherwise. And then in his or her absence, we see everything, the dust settles, and we see where we're at. Yes, you had a question?
Yeah. We were talking yesterday about Krishna's different Shaktis and sort of thinking about the relationship with them, with the metaphor of fire and such. And I was just thinking about his external Shakti and how we're sort of, Jiva Shakti is covered by that often and then can go into both the external and internal. I'm sort of wondering from Krishna's perspective, what is sort of the purpose of the external? Like, why isn't it all internal? Like with a fire, what is the purpose for smoke? Maybe for signaling stuff. I don't know if the metaphor breaks down, but and in that regard, because he comes and teaches as Chaitanya and his associates, and it's sort of seemingly enters the external. I was just thinking, like, why? Like, why at all? Why not just always, once you enter the internal, you never go back, but why the external to begin with? Is it a molding of joy or some sort of?
Mhm. Mhm. What we see in terms of our experience is that there is an external world, an objective world. That's how we experience life, right? We're a subject experiencing, and there's an objective world that we experience. That's our everyday, experience. And we also, if we look carefully at it, with the help of good guidance, let's say from the Gita and so forth, and sadhus, we see that our interaction with that world, as it appears, is problematic. We see that, we experience it. So when we talk about it, it's kind of like, yeah, that's true. That is what happens. I get attached to things, and they don't endure, and they become a problem. I bought a thing. I thought it was going to be great. It's not as good as what I thought it was going to be, and I still owe for it. And just to give a crude example, so I'm going to give you an answer like the Buddha would give you. Not too bad. But it's basically, this is your experience. There is an external world. And your experience with it is that it's problematic in certain ways. We don't need to go into all the details. We've done that repeatedly. And so rather than wondering why it's there, as if to say, maybe shouldn't buy into this. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Why it's not our position to wonder why things are there as much as it is to deal with things that are actually there. There is a problem. Our interaction with the external world is problematic. It doesn't seem to be quite the perfect fit that we feel life should be. We're a little bit like a fish out of water, trying to always adjust it and dampen the beach or something like that, but it's not like being in the water. And so if we deal with the problem, then we rise above the problem. And then we have a perspective to look at the problem that's different than the one we're in now, which enables us to perhaps understand the why of it. But your question is kind of like, why is there anything? Why is there something instead of nothing? It's a famous philosophical question. Why is there something instead of nothing? Why is there God? Why am I? It's modified slightly because it's like, why not all good instead of sometimes bad? There are different ways to answer it. It's probably not, there's no one way that's going to satisfy everybody. But I mean, you could say, without bad, how is there good? Bad is absence of good. Why isn't there light only? And why is there darkness? The fact is, there are both. Now, that said, that's kind of the Buddha answer. The Buddha answer is just deal with it. Okay, it's a problem. Deal with it, and then once you solve the problem, then there'll be answers that will satisfy you. That won't satisfy you now, or can't be articulated now, because the problem is you're under the influence of it. So that said, there is another answer that I will give you. It's basically, why is there a material world? a couple answers. You could say why is there suffering? You could say that's like saying, why didn't God make a square circle? So that doesn't make any sense, right? There's no such thing as a square circle, right? So what I mean by that is, if you are a unit of freedom, of will, if you have will, means you have some freedom, right? Will means choice. You're an agent of choice. So, and that ultimately also translates into action. So, you're a unit of will, an agent of action, is different ways of talking about it. So, you're an element, monad of freedom, unlike matter. It doesn't have freedom to make choices, right? So, if you say, why didn't God make people or jivas that are free, that didn't have a bad choice to make? That's like saying, why didn't God make a square circle? You understand? You can't have a unit of freedom, will, and at the same time militate that they can never make a bad choice. Just these two don't go together. So which one do you want? So you want the freedom? Gandhi said to the British, who said to him, "You Indian people are not fit to rule." He said, "Well, we want the freedom to rule wrong, but we want freedom." Something like that. So if you want freedom, if you value that, I'm a unit of will, then you have to take what comes with it. There has to be the chance that you're going to, make the wrong choice, so to speak. So this is the nature of the Tatastha Jiva. It's a certain type of will. It's different than the Swarup Shakti. And for order to be what it is, then it has to be able to make wrong decisions. So there has to be that opportunity. It's another kind of answer. But to go further, if the God is all loving, then a certain kind of love is compassion, right? There may be fraternal love, parental love, maybe romantic love, and there may be compassionate love. So if the Godhead is dwelling in his own realm that's luminous and joyful and so forth, then it would appear that in that realm there's no opportunity to experience compassion. So if God is going to be the perfect object of love, then he or she, God, has to be able to reciprocate in all forms of love and be familiar with all forms of love. Compassion is only possible if there are those that need to be helped. So it's mentioned in Krishna Das's book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Narayan in Vaikuntha, he has all these liberated persons there. And sometimes he thinks, I want to bestow, this is such a nice thing, these forms of liberation, Salokya, Sarishta, Samipya, Sarupya. I want to bestow it on someone. I'd like to give this to someone, but there's no one to give it to. Everybody's liberated. So he can't be compassionate in that realm. Therefore, to correspond with this aspect of God, that's something that happens in time, but we're just limited in the way we could talk about it. It's for there to be a dimension in the Godhead of compassionate love, there needs to be a realm that corresponds with it, where it fits, where it can be expressed. And so there is a feature of Narayan called Mahavishnu, and he manifests such that through him Narayan can experience the expression of compassionate love. And it's from that Mahavishnu that all these jivas conditioned by matter come, and he presides over the darkness, if you will, or the Maya Shakti, and through him the avatars come. He's the original avatar, because he's in the Paravail, in the spiritual world. He manifests outside of it, although beyond it, it has jurisdiction of it, and from him come little samples like of himself. The one becomes many, and because they're small, unlike him, in the face of the Maya Shakti, they find themselves in a predicament that he, in the face of the Maya Shakti, does not. And so he avatars or descends and makes the Veda available and so forth to share it with them, that they might meet their maker. And with the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a special kind of thing happens. Whereas not the typical avatar comes, but Swami Bhagavan Krishna's coming and in pursuit of Radharani. So there's a special dispensation at that time that takes place. So in order that the Godhead be full in love, because your question says, well, if he's all loving, in a sense, if the God is all loving, this is kind of the same genre of your question as yours. If God is all loving, why is there a place of suffering? Well, if God is all loving, then he has to be compassionate also. So there has to be some scope for that. And so here we find ourselves in what's called the Shrishti Leela. It's a type of Leela, the Leela of creation, the play of creation, play of expanding the world and contracting the world and so forth. And the avatars come, it's a drama. And that's a very, of course, metaphysical answer. And we see practically that if we follow that answer and apply ourselves to the compassionate outreach of Vishnu, that our suffering ends. So then it starts to make sense from practical experience. But again, I mean, why is there darkness? Why is there anything? Some questions are like, there are certain things, and how to deal with them is the issue. Why is there God? Why is there a universe? Why am I? Why questions only go so far. It's important as they are. But this is a kind of in philosophy or in theology, it's called theodicy, basically. Basically, the question is, if God is all good, why is there a world of darkness? Why aren't we all there with God? And something like that. So there are a lot of different ways to answer it. But often this emphasis on the freedom of the jiva, this unit of will, is central to many traditions in terms of how they answer it. The idea of a world that the God is all loving and compassion is part of that loving. This is very Gaudiya idea, very nice idea, actually. And there's there are kind of fringe benefits for those who are bound and become liberated. They have experience of being delivered that the Nityasiddhis don't have experience of. It affords them a particular perspective. Experientially, others may see it and know about it, but some are also participated in that compassion by descending with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he comes, for example. So, does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Just a small follow-up.
Yeah.
So the love of compassion and or that feeling and that sharing of compassion or whatever it is that a relationship in the spiritual world, or does that end once?
It's kind of I understand your question. It's not a rasa to have with Krishna. There is something called karunya rasa, which is, it does mean mercy, but it's different in that Krishna is the object. For example, Mother Yasoda has compassion for Krishna. So that's different than Krishna having compassion for Mother Yasoda, who's the devotee. So the devotee sees Krishna as an object of compassion. That's peculiar. The worldly compassion is the high end of love in this world, and the low end from the spiritual perspective. So selfishness here is on the low end, and you rise up higher, and then you go through the different types of love in the material world. So you have illicit romantic love. It's like the low end of love. It's just for lust only, something, It's the low end. Then you come to romantic love, and then you go to parental love. Romantic is the low end. Then comes parental love. Yeah, parental love is a little higher. But friendly love is even higher, because there you can just tell your friend as it is. Truth, in other words. And in parental love, you don't always tell your kids the truth. You can't. You're just too biased, and with friends equals, they just lay it out there. So, then you go from there to teacher and student. That's even higher. The relationship is pure. You're only teaching. That's where the compassion comes. So it's on the high end. And then you go to the other side, and it starts building up the other way. And that's the basis there. And then you go to friendly love and parental love. So it's upside down, something like that. But that said, in the progression of love spiritually, whatever is included in the less developed form of love is included in the more developed form of love. So compassion does, the fact that God is compassionate, so to speak, that doesn't go away, but it may be overridden by intimacy and the fact that there's no practical need for it, so to speak. But we find great devotees who are in all types of relationship with Krishna, also emphasizing his compassionate, kind nature, and it happens in the manifest belief that Krishna shows compassion to Kubja. So they know that about him. Does that help? Yeah. So here we are. So we have to deal with that suffering, problem, darkness, and ways, bringing the light. What else? Yes.
I was going to ask if you could share something with the children practically that they can do when they're just going to school and living their lives, and then maybe you can check up on them in the spring and see if the things that you tell them, ask them how they're doing on them. Just some practical things that maybe they could take into their lives.
Like following Ekadasi?
Sure.
And all your friends go, "Huh? Come eat any grains today?" Then you have to say, we follow this tradition, and we think that, well, first of all, we're vegetarians, and so our main food is grains, and we think that the world would be fed much more easily through grains than through meat, because all the grains it takes to make an animal fat to kill and eat is not economically, environmentally wise. You probably know that argument. You've heard it, or you taught that to your kids. So you have to make that argument to your friends, for example. But then to further that idea, that we fast the main thing that we eat, which is grains, chapatis, rice, bread, and so forth, twice a month. And we think that if everybody did that, especially in the affluent countries, then there would be so much more abundance of grain available. And on those days, we twice a month, on the 11th day of the waning and the waxing moon, we fast the grains. Also, because we're devotees, we try to control our senses and our minds. We don't just let them go everywhere. We try to, and the body is made primarily of fluids, and so the moon controls the tides, right? The ocean, and so it also controls the flow of the liquidity of the body. And so it's thought in Hinduism that on the 11th day of the waning and the waxing moon, the fluids in the body rise, and they put more pressure on the senses to indulge and contact the sense objects. So by fasting from grains, then we counteract that influence, and we can be more focused. That's a lot to remember. Your parents can explain it. And then you have you follow Ekadasi, and then one of the kids asks you, why are you doing that? And you don't go, I don't know. Mom, why are we doing that? We're weird. No, you've got a well thought out answer. So, and you should be convinced of it, otherwise you won't. Don't do it just because somebody told you to. I mean, at a certain point you should. But when questions start coming, if your parents can't answer them, then they can't expect you to follow them either. But they can always say, ask Guru Maharaj. So I'll give them a brief answer. I don't expect the kids to remember it all, but the parents should, and then you can tell them. So as Guru Maharaj suggested, to follow the cause, because that'll probably bring some questions, when somebody offers you a cookie and says, oh, it's Ekadasi. What's Ekadasi? We do that, and this is why. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought this was important enough to emphasize. So we do it because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu emphasized it. There's more to Ekadasi, of course. Ekadasi is the upavas means to fast. So we fast on Ekadasi, but upavas also means to become close, to reside close. Vas also means residence, so to reside close. So it's 2 days of the month we make a special effort to reside closer to God and think more about Krishna. And when we think about Krishna, we think of offering things to Krishna, and to such an extent that we might even forget about our own sensual demands, and therefore we will fast. In the context of a positive approach, the negative is the outward expression of fasting. It's a complicated story, but so that's my advice. How's that?
Thank you.
That's good.
Sounds good. You all have any questions that we haven't answered for you? You want to ask?
Yeah, you can always ask me questions. You guys can write me too. Your parents have my address. You can write me questions. I can try to answer. I like you all. You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm pretty approachable. But yeah, I look forward to spending more time with you in the future. Most of you have more difficult years ahead. Yes.
Encouraging.
Encouraging for us.
Trying to prepare you for that. The teenage years are problem with the teenagers is that they know everything. They know everything. Yes.
I guess while on the topic of children, what about practical advice for the teenagers that are just starting into high school or in the middle school and dating? Like what kinds of, I don't know, like what kind of advice can you give them from a
Well,
business
I gave a nice
perspective?
lecture on this actually not so long ago to a Hindu community in Charlotte. I don't know if you heard that, but
Yeah.
well, what I talked about was from the parents' point of view of how to, kind of prepare their kids for that and so forth, and how to think about it themselves as it's happening. And I talked about the importance of core principles and so forth that really make unarguably good sense, really good sense, like vegetarianism from so many different angles. It makes sense. Sexuality, for example. So as you become an adolescent, sexual aspect of your humanness comes into play. And so it's like this whole new thing just happened to me, like, whoa, and I look at people differently, and suddenly, it used to be when I got a birthday present, it was a sweater, and I go, that's dumb, a sweater. Or something, not sweater, what do I look like? All of a sudden becomes important, and so it does something to certain hormones start to function in ways that they weren't before, and or whatnot, and so the head starts to spin, and the world looks different. And then the parents are all worried, oh no, the kids are gonna have sex, and what will happen to them? And of course, they are what happened to you. So you have to tell your kids this. You have to tell them honestly, and I think this is pretty honest. You have to say to them, you're going to find yourself in this situation, or you are finding yourself in this situation, and it's going to be positive, and it's going to be negative. There are going to be ups and downs to it, and it's going to be disconcerting and encouraging at times in different ways, and so forth. It's like like an ocean, with on a stormy day. But you can tell your kids and I think most of you can say this honestly, the best thing that I got out of expressing my own sexuality was you. That's the best thing that came out of it. So that is how to understand this tendency, this urge, what in its most meaningful expression, this is what it results in. So if you want to get into it, so to speak, this is the best thing that could possibly come out of it. The other things that seem to be the benefits are so insignificant in comparison that once we had you, we started to see it in that way, and you got upon them that there's something very valuable and important in this, but it's not the things that the popular culture promotes are the real benefits of it. Those aren't the benefits of it. And if that can be instilled in them, then they might forget it for a while, but it does, and that's all you can do. As parents, you can only impress those kinds of ideas such that the kids will eventually turn back to you and go, you were pretty smart, you were pretty wise, and you have to say that with it, when you may do otherwise, you may think, but this is my experience, and it's your father's experience, and it's your aunt's experience, and uncle's experience, and so on and so forth. And that should, register with them at some point, stick with them, and their own experience will confirm it as well. And, the turbulence of those times are just like times you got to go through. That's all. Parents got to hold on, that's all. whoa, the kid is going, and she's not the right girl. I can see it. He's not the right guy, and you can't get that. In this culture, you can't get that involved. You've got to set a good example. Be wise, give wisdom, emphasize these types of things, really important things that you can't be refuted, so to speak, practically. Instill those types of foundational points in them, and that will carry the day ultimately. It'll anchor them, so to speak. They'll go adrift a bit, but they'll be anchored back to that. And I think that every culture also has the same thing in mind. All parents want their kids to either be a brahmachari or devotee parents, but all parents want, mostly that's rare, but amongst devotee parents you can find that interest. But all parents want their kids to have a meaningful life. They want them to marry the right girl or guy and have a nice family and have it work out even better than our family. That's what everybody wants. And American culture is very different than, say, your Indian culture of times gone by and so forth. But they're basically both want the same thing. They have different approaches. It's not so useful to argue which approach is better, because you live in a country right now that has a certain approach, and that's the way it's going to work. And it involves, you might have been. And I was talking to Indian families, and they all married because their parents picked out somebody, and so, but they said now our kids are here, and doesn't work like that. And I said that's not a bad thing. It's just a different method of arriving at the same thing. So you experiment beforehand. That's the system here in America. But you have to instill what the objective in all this is. You have to instill in the fact that, for example, the infatuation is something that comes and it goes. It's magic. And when the magic's gone,
It's gone.
You don't look for other magic. You don't just go, the magic is gone. You have to realize it's only magic. Oh, I got it. It's only magic. You don't go for another magic show, another magic show, another magic show. You realize, oh, it's magic. And I don't believe in magic. So let's get to the reality here. What this attraction is about. What it involves. If you don't want to be an illusion about it, totally, and just chasing after some magical, infatuated, this in modern society kind of promotes this infatuation can just go on forever, and it's really a disservice. Happily ever after, again, it's of course looked at philosophically. It's also talking about what we ultimately can attain and spiritually and so forth. But you have to kind of emphasize to such people, young teenagers, look, yeah, you're infatuated, it's going to pass, and then what's going to be left with it? And so prepare them for that. So you get, have some factor some wisdom in and so forth, and that's the best you could do, and then they'll settle into some situation, hopefully, or have the kind of advice, that is a forewarning and gives them the whole picture. And then when you give them the whole picture, they may say, I think I will be a brahmachari.
A little bit.
There was one Indian family, and the wife, the mother of the family, was telling me that she had a son and he had 3 friends. And they were all tight, and so he'd come home and sometimes bring the friends over, and they'd have, they were always together and stuff like that. So she used to sometimes make lunches for them. And so she made lunch, and she'd always ask how they liked it, because she's Indian, she cooks different and so forth, and it's vegetarian. So her son would say, oh, they really liked it, really liked it. And she asked, how did you know, how did Tommy like it? You know, he said, oh, Tommy wasn't there. Well, why not? He's not hanging out with us so much anymore. Really? What happened? Before guys were so tight, you know, all of it. He says, yeah, well, you know, Mary came along. And so Tommy's not hanging with us that much anymore. She said, oh, and then she tried to explain something to him, and it wasn't making a lot of sense. And so then a couple other times, you know, well, you see Tommy? I haven't seen him. We haven't seen him lately, you know. And then another time, how's Tommy doing? You know, we don't see him much, but he seems happier. He seems happier. Somebody's got something going that's, you know, better than the group, you know. And mother just listened, and then after a while, she said, "Yeah, you seen Tommy?" He says, "Yeah, he really liked the, you know, the doll you made, you know." Oh yeah, he said, too much maintenance. Too high maintenance. So then he had, you know, seen the whole cycle. He'd seen the whole cycle, and mother felt it was like a real teachable moment. Like, okay, you know, now let's talk about that. See where it all goes and ends up, and that just prepares you to understand it better and be more prepared to be in a relationship if that's your, you know, your destiny, or, you know, you may have to go through a couple to, you know, see your way through it, and sensibly, with your feet on the ground and your head straight on, you know, decide not to pursue it, instead of just like, yes, I'll be a barometer. I mean, we can encourage that too, but we'll all go, well, we'll see. So, but yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that you kind of have to, this double life. You get all this philosophy, it's good, you're inspired, and then the whole school system is different, and the friends are different, and it's disconcerting. But the, you know, the home example and devotee extended family and so forth should be there to help, and they should be kind and generous and understanding, and, you know, let it play itself out to some extent. Always be waiting to catch you, you know, if you should fall, something like that. What else? What's the time now?
It's 12:05.
Okay. So we've had some nice discussions. Nice to see you all. And I'll be here another 10 days, right? You can always come back. Some other devotees are coming next week, right? Tomorrow. Okay.
Archie and Carmen coming tomorrow. And Amala Bhakti.
Okay. Cool.
And Matapriya is coming
When?
tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'm going to get Radha on Tuesday.
Right. Okay.
So she'll be here the rest of the week.
Okay, sounds good. Shri Gauranga Madhavaki.
Jai.
Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Lord Premanand.
Raja Tripurari Swami Ki Jai.
Oh, no, not at all, no.
Afternoon. What?
Not at all. Very, very.
Yeah.
It was pretty awkward.
Don't worry, it wasn't just you. It was for all of us.
It was for everybody. It really was not just you.
No,
No.
no, not at all.
I
I was so happy.
See, and then you guys would hear it right from me first. So then now it's like,
It was for Jai and
Abby,
everybody's me.
Yeah.
Magic.
It really was Archie.
I would stop looking for the magic.
It was
Yes.
What if I
It's like,
start thinking,
yes. wait a minute. I lost him.
I'll tell my kids, it's really nothing to talk about. If you're from around every single area, they all got here just because somebody got you. I mean, it's.
Oh, that wasn't the awkward part at all.
The awkward part was that your mom asked it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I wish T-Hawk was here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something I haven't heard before, so.
No, T-Hawk's heard it.
Sometimes they don't listen to us
It's true.
about certain things, and so if they hear it from their mom,
Or just-
maybe.
Or just someone like
Just
I
someone
mean, they
different.
listen, but it's like a different wavelength.
Yeah, yeah. I just
I mean, I talked about it with him before. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a brahmachari, so he told me everything. I was telling him how disappointing everything is. I'm aware of the magic.
Who said that?
Rumors.
Like one point again.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had good luck with it either, but still, it doesn't.
I know he's.
But there's-
I've experienced.
I've
You're
heard
good
good
about
things.
telling them.
That's the most important.
Yeah.
And then I thought, right, he got all of it.
Who?
Like, he's got
Oh,
all of
it's okay. No.
No, it's true. That was
No,
sweet.
I feel like it's such a difference. Like,
Yeah.
you're like trying to be.
Yeah.
Just like,
It looks so weird. It's miraculous.
yes, and
Yeah.
it feels like much more like
Oh my God, it looks crap.
special.
Yeah.
than just-
It's like, are you eating nervous? He's going to sleep. He already knows all that.
It's all right. We're here to get him.
Look at how he's sleeping.
Oh,
His
yeah.
poor joint.
Oh,
That's his foot.
What a stretch.
Oh my God, that's his. Oh, God,
Oh,
his hip bones are
When
crying
they're
out.
young, they're flexible. No other.
I know, but then you get old and you feel all those times you slept tied up in a knot, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I was gonna get out. Today, it's kind of passes to the sauna.
It's not working very well. because
The steam room in house working. I needed to.
I brought him, I was like, I'm gonna do that.
Yes, we're gonna have
Yes.
to. Oh,
good.
That's
from my house.
Okay, that was from you, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
You got it. So, yes, Asha Maharaj says, I don't know anything about half that
Archana. Archana. Like, oh my God, you got us mixed up. No,
Why did Archana send me this?
Bobby, did you pay attention to all that? You know what he does, and I looked at him and he says, that you tell him the best thing that came from
Yeah.
is them, and Avi went, oh, the best thing.
There is no such thing as a square circle.
That's what
you
I told
heard.
them to pay attention today and find it. They actually, I like went through the notes I took yesterday, and they're like, oh yeah, and this and this.
Where are my
They
notes?
actually paid attention.
I haven't really.
They seem to get something out of it. You like that chair?
Yeah.
Roll on your butt. Come on for our here.
No, I'm watching.
You don't need to watch Bano.
Oh my God.
Come on.
You're just too